Birchtam LeDavid, Shamreini Yelki Chasisi Vach, Amart Ladinoi, Adinoi Ata, Tevasi Balalecha, Likedoishim Ashabaret Sema, Vadiri Kol Chefzi Bam, Yirbo Atzvoisam Acher Moharu, Balasich Niskeyem Hidam, Uvaleso Eshemoisam Al Sefosai, Anenoy menos chelki v'koisi ato toy mich kairoli chavolim noflu li banimim af nachalos shofroloi avorich es adinoy asher yotzani af leitlois yisroni chilyoy esoy shivisi adinoy lenegdi samid Kimi mini balemoid Loch ein samach libi vayogel kevoidi apesori yishkoin lo vetach Ki lo isazov nafshi lishol Lo isitein chasid cholin shochas Toidiyein yoyrach chayim esoy vasamachos espanecha nimois Bimin chanetzach We gather here today to farewell Jerry Greenberg, Gerald, dear beloved father, father-in-law, friend, employer, grandfather, and for all of the others which are on Zoom, joining because you're joining the family in the outpouring of love at this difficult time. Just one more psalm as we embark on today's funeral. I'm going to ask you please to join me in the English. If you have the handout. The idea of these psalms is that what we do here today is we accompany the soul as it goes on high and the physical body goes down into the earth from whence it has come. Chapter 23 of the Psalms. And I see not everyone has it. So maybe we just share in the front over here. If you have in the back, just share. Every two persons share and send up the front over here so we can continue. 23rd Psalm. Please join me in the English. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Today we gather with absolute respect and with the cognizance of the greatness of the mitzvah of farewelling Gerald Greenberg, Yosef Mordechai ben Shmuel, and Shana. The mitzvah is great because this is an act that gets done that one can never expect anything in return. It's a mitzvah that we are told in the Bible, it's called Chesed Shalemes. It's kindness of emet, of truth. Everything that we do at a Jewish funeral is based upon thousands of years of tradition. It is well known that the first Jewish family, Abraham and Sarah, the Bible stipulates very, very clearly that when Abraham heard that his wife Sarah had passed, he negotiated for a plot of land, which in the area called Hebron, the cave of Machpelah, and there he buried his beloved wife Sarah. From that time on, from the first lady and the first man, Jewish, this is the way we farewell our dear, beloved people. God instills the soul in every living being. God keeps the soul in the living being for an immaculate, precise amount of years of time that only the divine can understand. We don't preordain our entrance to this world, and we don't plan, choreograph our exit from this world. The only thing we can control are those years in between the entrance and the exit. And it is that we eulogize when we farewell our loved ones. Today, we model the hesped, the eulogy, after Abraham, which eulogized his wife. But not only do we model it after Abraham, we look at the words of the Bible, which tell us explicitly that not only are we talking about the departed one, but that the soul of the departed one is here to hear everything that we're saying, all the words which are said, all the wonderful qualities which will be enumerated, all the love that will be shared, and all the pain that will be shared. It's not merely to extol the virtue of the departed one, it's also so on high they hear about the wonderful qualities, not just from a divine perspective, but from a human perspective. And we all know that we live in this world, in Jerry's case, 92 years. The challenges are formidable. But yet, when we live our life with dignity, when we live our life with love, when we're able to live it with righteousness, those qualities accompany us on high and take our soul as they soar up on high, yet further and higher from whence it come when it comes down into this world. Those who know Jerry know that he may be, imagine him sitting here. He would have a small smile on his face, and he would probably say, get on with it. The sage Shammai of the Mishnah says, the quality you want to have in this world, emor ma'at va'asei harbe, say little, but do a lot. If Jerry didn't personify say little, do a lot, then I don't know who Shammai was speaking to. And he continues and says, V'haveh mekabel es kol ha'adam b'sever panim yafos. And then when you greet someone, always greet them with a smile. Also Jerry. But I have to tell you, although I know that he received everyone respectfully and gracefully, when I first met him, it took a while to recognize this quality within him, specifically because he was cut to the chase. Russ would tell me more than once, oh, Yehuda, call my dad. Just call him, say hello. I'd met him on a number of occasions, at Simchas, different occasions. That was always the more difficult phone call to make. Who's this? Yehuda. What do you want? But once I got through the first 30 seconds, it was smooth sailing for about 2 minutes. But I actually know he was listening. He appreciated it. Russ would always tell me, he loved that phone call. And I know that's the way he was. Emo ma'at v'asei harbe. Speak little and do a lot. But at the core, always be respectful and gracious to those around you. Because that's what a mensch is. That's what the cornerstone of living like a mensch in this world is. And Jerry was a mensch. We are told when it comes to eulogies, one is not permitted to elongate and exaggerate the qualities. Sometimes you hear it at a funeral and you almost don't recognize who they're talking about. But the real idea is to say the qualities, to know the person, and to enumerate them. That God can see all of the wonderful qualities. God is God. But life is such that we have to live it in a manner that others can see these wonderful qualities. We all know Jerry passed on a Shabbos. It says in the holy books, to pass on a Shabbos is very special. Why? Because the soul anyhow gets elevated on a Shabbat. Now if you double that elevation, when the soul goes up on high, it's double special. King David, we are told, passed on a Shabbat. King David had a story in the Talmud which says, when he found out he was going to pass away on Shabbat, he said, find me another day. It doesn't seem appropriate to pass away on Shabbat. The angel of death looks at his ledger and said, no. Shabbat, you're written down for Saturday. Says King David, you know what? Take off a day. Let me go on Friday. I don't want to disturb the Shabbat. The angel of death looks at the ledger and says, I can't. Can't do Saturday. Friday. It says over here Saturday. I can't cut off a day. Okay, do it Sunday. Give me one extra day. No, I can't. It says Shabbat. And Shabbat is a day that King David's soul ascended on high. It's a special time. And I don't want to run into anyone else's speech, but Blanche also passed on a Shabbat. Now, if that doesn't tell you something, just on high, the precision when the soul leaves the body is a divine moment. Divinely, God understood that this was the day to take Jerry. Jerry was an Ish Emet. He was a man of truth. There's no show business. He was who he was, and he let you know who he was, and that's who he was. There wasn't any BS. The Mishnah says, Hayom katzer v'amlacha merubah. The day is short, but the work is a lot. You got to get to work. Jerry personified the idea of just getting to work, doing what needed to be done. But from everything that was dear to Jerry, we all know his family. His family was first and foremost. 67 years, he lived in a beautiful marriage, creating a family, kvelling, nachas over the family. Everything he did, he thought about his family, his kids. Of course, he talked about his boys, his 3 boys, his grandchildren, so dear to him. He's so proud of them. I remember sitting with him many years ago, drinking a scotch on Michael's Way. And we got into some conversations. That was when Russ and Robyn, you were still in Weston. We got into some conversations. And I recognized about 2 minutes into the conversation, you may as well rename the street from Michael's Way to Jerry's Way. Because that's the way the conversation went. How fortunate we are to know a man that personifies these ideals, that shares these values, and in that, we are all better people. That we can look at these qualities, that we can ourselves examine our lives in order to see that we should live our lives better. In that, we fulfill the dictum and the words of King Solomon, that when you hang around a house of mourners. When you come to a funeral, it may not seem exciting. It's not a party. But what it achieves for each and every one of us, when we reflect and we can understand what really makes a difference in life, then we become better people. And when we become better people, we know that his memory is a blessing for us. Tehei nishmato tzrura b'tzror hachayim. May his soul be bound in the bond of life. Amen. I'd like to call upon Russ.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank everybody for being here. And I know there's a lot of people watching online, and we very much appreciate Scott, Greg, and I, our wives, and our kids, that everybody is here and online. It's a very sad day, but he was a great man, and I'd like to spend a few minutes giving you my thoughts today. My father enjoyed life very much, and he got to do things in his 92 years that he wanted to do. He never held back. He would go where he wanted to and do what he'd want. Good way to be. As my wife Robyn said about my dad, he did what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it. He had a true zest for life. Yes, he had ups and downs financially, but he always found a way to make it up and build a great legacy for his family and accomplish much professionally for the many people that worked for him. My dad was always such a creative entrepreneur, and to be successful as he was, he worked very hard. He would be up out of the house before 6 in the morning from when I was a little boy till 5 in the evening. He and my mom had a wonderful, wonderful marriage. Yes, they had their ups and downs also, but they did so many things together. Each developed their own lives, and each shared many, many things together. Number one, as the rabbi said, was their love of family and his 3 sons, Greg, Scott, and I. It is difficult to put into words how much my dad cared about my mom and his 3 sons, as he would say, his boys. During the last several years, my dad made it his priority to make sure that mom was always well taken care of during her state of dementia. There are so many pictures at their house of the 3 of us and all the fantastic trips that we went on together. My dad loved traveling, and he shared that with my brothers and I and our families. He always wanted to know what each of us was doing, and also made a point that Scott, Greg, and I would not be just brothers, but true friends. Jerry really enjoyed work. He worked till almost his last days. He would have even his checks brought to him to sign when he was in the apartment and couldn't come to the office anymore. His CFO and literally our 4th brother, David Lily Rose, was such a great resource and support for Jerry. And we're so lucky that he worked with Jerry for almost 40 years. And you'll hear from David in a little bit. Being born in 1930, Jerry grew up in the days of the Great Depression, where his parents, Sam and Molly, did not have a lot during those early yewas. And there's a story I'd like to tell, which is represented by Jerry and his great brother Arnold, was that one Hanukkah, they didn't have a lot of money at that time. So each of them, unbeknownst to the other, wrapped up chess pieces. One wrapped up the white, the other brother wrapped up the black. And they traded, and that was their Hanukkah gifts to each other. This upbringing made them very hard workers. They took nothing for granted, and they appreciated the opportunities that they were able to create in this great country. Now I want to relate a few of my favorite memories, although there's many, of how my dad, Jerry Greenberg, made my life have so much meaning and enjoyment. My dad made sure that Greg, Scott, and I could always take care of ourselves, from simple things like knowing how to swim, as well as appreciate the benefits of work. When we were less than 8 years old, Jerry took us to swimming at the JCC in Denver and made sure that we could swim well. The love of swimming has always been with me as a result. Scott and I would ride our bikes before we had our driver's license to my dad's apartment. It was literally 3 or 4 miles when we were young to do work to clean the swimming pool at the apartment buildings. It was our pleasure. When I wanted to play golf in high school, my dad joined the local country club so that we could play together. While he did not play much, he knew that I enjoyed golf and made sure that we had the opportunity to play. Jerry and my mom, Blanche, who only died back in November, took us on several very important trips while we were young. The trip I want to mention, and I will never forget obviously, is when they took us to Israel for the first time. This was in 1971 during Passover. And my dad somehow arranged the family to have the Passover Seder at an army base in Sinai. Very few people ever can say that. I mention this because Jerry, while he was not strongly religious, he valued Judaism and the important things, the traditions and teaching of being Jewish. He always wanted to say Kiddush after my mom died, which we did numerous times since November. Now I want to speak about the reason that I got a great college education. Jerry started at University of Colorado, but never graduated, as he went to serve our country in the Navy during the Korean War aboard the USS Whiteside. Yet he always valued education. One of his friends, Jerry Bronfin, had sent his son to a little school called Claremont McKenna College in California. My dad thought I should speak with Leon and learn a little bit about it. After meeting with Leon, this sparked my interest. My dad took me on the plane to Claremont to visit, and I thought it was a good fit, and luckily I was admitted. Since this was a private college, it was expensive, even in 1975. And my dad's finances were not good at that time because the real estate market was weak. But he took on extra work at nights to have the funds to pay the tuition at Claremont so I could go there. He literally brought cash to pay the first year's tuition of just over $5,000. This is where Scott also went to college. I have to say, Claremont not only taught us how to think critically, but opened doors for Scott and I that have brought us great personal and financial success. Dad, I can never thank you enough for the gift of a great education. In fact, I am proud to say that my youngest son, Asher, also graduated from Claremont, and my dad was there in 2018 at that graduation. Sorry to be so choked up. But I want to mention that my dad also did have an Ivy League education experience. In 1979, the summer before I started my MBA studies at Dartmouth, he attended and completed the intensive Tuck Executive Development Program for senior executives. But what's interesting is he was only one of the 50 people that studied together that did not have a college degree and was not an employee of a Fortune 100 company. He was an entrepreneur. He was very proud of that accomplishment, and I know that because his brother, Arnie Greenberg, would tell us, Jerry would call him saying, I'm studying for 3 or 4 hours a night. After college, my dad always made sure to be part of our lives. He would often come to New York City, where I lived for 15 years, and I'll never forget that he came to watch me run in the 1992 New York City Marathon, met me at Central Park, which was near the end of the marathon, as people may know, ran about a quarter mile with me to keep me going during that last portion of the marathon. We celebrated very much afterwards. He and my mom had season tickets to Carnegie Hall, as most people know, and they both loved listening and going to the concerts together, be it in Aspen, Denver, or even in New York City. As most of you know, Jerry supported my mom with her love of piano, and he had purchased for her not one, but 2 Steinway grand pianos that they kept in their house. Basically, that was their whole living room. When Mom died, Dad made sure that the pianos had the right long-term home, and through the efforts of Greg, he fulfilled my dad's wishes by donating one of the pianos to Colorado State University's concert hall, and the other to the Aspen Music School, where my mom spent many happy and enjoyable years. When I was thinking of starting my private equity business in '96, Dad was a great resource of both encouragement and one of the first investors, if not the first, into that fund. Dad was always there for Greg and I, my partner Greg and Altus, to discuss opportunities and the challenges of building a business. While Scott will discuss their business together at ECD, I wanted to make sure that I say, which is so true, that my dad and Scott were great business partners together. They helped each other. They built ECD so successfully over the last 30 years, more than 30 years. They were a tremendous team. While I could go on and on about the many, many memories, I want to conclude by saying that Gerald Greenberg was a fantastic man, a great husband, and the best father a son could have. Dad, I love you very much, and you will be sorely, sorely missed. Thank you. Now I have the honor of introducing my brother Scott.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, and thank you, people, for watching on Zoom. I'm sure some of the comments are going to be duplicative, but there's going to be a lot of differences. Anybody that was connected to my father, Gerald Greenberg, was extremely lucky. During his 66 years of marriage and through sickness and in health, our father stood by and deeply loved his wife and our mother, Blanche Greenberg. Our father also went above and beyond to support her passion for learning, practice, and performance of classical piano music. Once the 3 of us left for college, my mother made piano her primary passion, and my father could not have been more supportive. Progressively, and beginning roughly 10 years before she passed away, my mother began to suffer from the harsh reality of Alzheimer's. Nevertheless, our father did whatever was possible to slow the progression of her loss of memory. but to also provide her continuous loving care and support while the process compromised his own health. He compromised his own health for hers. Anyone that knew my father, even for a short while, realized there was nothing more important to our father than his 3 sons. I know my 2 brothers agree. There's nothing our father would not have done for his 3 boys. My father also loved and took pride in all of his grandchildren, and also felt deep joy knowing that a wonderful 2-year-old great-grandson, Blake Lerner. Blake was born premature at the beginning of COVID in California. Although Blake was not able to visit my father until shortly before he died, my father enjoyed FaceTime calls with Blake and was thrilled to watch videos of Blake bouncing around in his gymnastics classes. In addition to his family, my father felt deeply about his core workplace family members that have been with him for decades. Lisa Ebersol, who's been with my father in Denver for over 40 years, was here just the other day to say goodbye. Our family tax accountant, Les Davidson, traveled here and just retired after taking care of our family tax returns for over 40 years. Of course, our company comptroller, David Lilyrose, you'll hear from shortly, that I affectionately refer to as the 4th Greenberg son. David has been with ECD Company 39 years. Finally, I want to mention our ECD Denver family includes Mike McShane, Donna Colbull, and Johnny. My father also felt special closeness to his Lincolnshire ECD work family members, including Renee Solomon, Cindy Herzog, Alison, who's my wife, our general counsel, and my incredible wife, and Justina Kuprek, also as well as Susan, Salim, our property maintenance staff, including Gustavo and Julio. Because I was at our hotels much more often than my father, it is noteworthy to point out that staff at our hotels and restaurants would frequently check in with me about how my father was doing because they also cared for him so much. On behalf of my family, I want to have a special mention to the loving and miraculous caretakers that my father received while he's been in Chicago, from caregivers including Carol Smith, Darwin Adiva, Darren Adiva, they're here today, and our loving care guide, Julia Foreman. Thank you. The 4 of them so tenderly looked after our father and prided him only with the warmest and tenderest care possible, which he earned and deserved. Well, I'm the middle son. Our business partnership began 37 years ago. Literally, my father was involved in our business until the final day he passed. Starting at the beginning of our first venture was a ground-up self-storage facility built here in Skokie. As it turns out, our first self-storage development project is only located 7 to 10 minutes from where we are now standing today. For me, there was a poetic beauty that now he's being laid to rest at nearly the same location where our business journey began 37 years ago. When I proposed to my father that we should build a self-storage on a 2-acre site in Skokie, it was way beyond my imagination that such a relatively small $1.5 million project would have led to a future real estate activities valued over $1 billion. While indeed it is an extraordinary achievement for a father-son partnership to last this long and achieve so much, as the years went by, my father and I gradually invested our capital increasingly in real estate projects well outside our existing core knowledge. As we branched into our new real estate ventures, neither of us had what experts consider the requisite level of experience and quality for either of us to develop either hospitality or entertainment properties. However, with an appetite for risk and an inherent confidence in our ability to figure stuff out together, we ended up building some pretty crazy stuff. Beginning in the early 1970s and early 1980s, my father had certainly steeled his backbone for taking on business risk and leverage. During the late 70s, which was even before I was bar mitzvahed, my father had already built thousands of apartments, sometimes borrowing 110% of the cost of the project. For my father, the financial structure for these transactions in the 70s were such that he was able to convince a commercial lender to give him enough money both to complete the construction of the new rental apartment building and also pocket a big profit even before he rented a single resident. Provided that a developer can produce sufficient income to make the loan payments and quickly fill up the building with lots of tenants, this strategy potentially can work out very nicely. Unfortunately, sometimes this strategy can backfire. And my father found himself in something known as Chapter 11. Well, enough said about that. Another sampling of my father's willingness to venture into unknown territory considered that he purchased and owned a series of racehorses with a plan to make money on them. Of course, with the typical real estate developer swagger, my father shamelessly named some of his racehorses after his completed real estate projects. For example, Piccadilly Square Apartments, located in the center of Denver, became Piccadilly Kid, the racehorse. I'm not sure if he made money with ponies, but he sure had fun. My father was also a financial backer of a prize professional boxer, Oscar Bonavina. Certainly not a low-risk investment. It was well known that my father loved professional and college football. Also, anybody that knew him realized how much he loved travel. Despite not having any background in operating travel agencies, it did not stop him for one moment from opening the Total Travel Agency. Furthermore, despite his lack of experience in creating special cruise events, he never hesitated in conceiving and executing his Super Bowl cruise experience. His plan was to book an entire cruise ship in New Orleans for a custom cruise, which was based on his calculus that like-minded Super Bowl fans and cruise travelers would be willing to buy 1 week of cruise vacation, provided it was packaged with a companion Super Bowl ticket. Owing to my father's guile and ingenuity, he was actually able to hustle enough football players, which would allow him to purchase enough Super Bowl tickets for everyone that booked a cabin on the cruise ship. Ultimately, my father locked his ass on the Super Bowl cruise plan. And in the end, almost no one actually paid for his cruise in the Super Bowl ticket combo. Yet he managed to have lots of fun because he gave away the cruise experience and Super Bowl tickets to his friends and family, and they all had a blast. Given my father's tolerance for daunting loan leverage or his willingness to follow wide-eyed schemes like racehorsing investments or backing a professional boxer or conceiving and executing his Super Bowl cruise extravaganza, made the ideas I proposed to him decades later, including audacious plans to construct a one-of-a-kind rooftop nightclub or repurpose an old taxi car repair building and turn it into a first-of-its-kind virtual production studio, did not seem quite ludicrous. As Gerald Greenberg's son, I was lucky enough to have a partner for 37 years that had enough guts to tolerate loads of risk. He was always willing to put his money next to mine on a 50-50 basis for all those years. As partners, we did endeavor to smartly consider and limit our risk on our hotel assets. While we believe we had calibrated acceptable levels of debt on our hotel properties, once the global pandemic hit, our hotels and restaurant located in downtown Chicago were the first and hardest hit sectors of the economy. Although we had largely felt we had conservative levels of debt on our properties, it was no match for the impact of COVID-19 and the effects of rioting on the hotel and restaurant industry. However, in the past 2 years, by standing strong and standing together, my father and I successfully navigated the most challenging and difficult circumstances that we've ever faced in our 37 years of partnership. We held on to all of our properties, and together we timely paid all of our expenses when there was very little revenue coming in the door. In order to make it through the pandemic, and in order to hold on to all of our assets required the full financial firepower that both of us could muster. Of course, the massive effort to hold on to the property also required the super loyal core ECD and SMASH team members performing business somersaults on a daily basis for over 2 solid years. This is an illustration of the type of strength and commitment that Gerald Greenberg gave to every aspect of life, including his business and his family and friends. If my father ever had a theme song or an anthem for that represented his life, it would certainly be the classic Frank Sinatra, My Way. He was an original. My father lived the life that he wanted. He did what he wanted to do without reservation or regret for any part of his entire life. Like Frank Sinatra, my father was and is the chairman of the board. When I joined ECD Company, my father allowed me to fully lead the company and guide the company to what it has become today. During the entire partnership, he was always my sounding board and my advisor. In his role as chairman, my father made the deliberate decision to support and back me, whatever decision direction I made for the company. Even if my father was unsure if my next investment was a good one or not, yet he gave me advice and he guided me along the way. There were times we certainly lost money. However, we certainly made more money than we lost over the years, but we did it together. Until his last breath of life, my father remained in charge. Like the song's lyric, he did it his way. Last Thursday afternoon, I was at his bedside, and he had stopped eating and drinking the previous 24 hours. While sitting at his bedside, although barely audible, I placed my ear up to his mouth. I heard him say in a deep, gurgled voice 3 times, "The wheels are coming down. The wheels are coming down. The wheels are coming down." As a lifetime multi-million-mile Wards United customer, my father realized he was now steering his own high-flying adventure craft into a final safe harbor destination. My father was determined to remain in complete command of his last journey and adventure. Soon after I left my father on Thursday afternoon, I let my brothers, children, and work family members in on what my father had just said to me. On Friday and Saturday, my father heard from his brother Arnie and various family members via FaceTime to say goodbye. Both our Denver and Chicago ECU work family members showed up in his bedside in Lincolnshire to say goodbye. Sammy, Matt, and Blake flew in from San Francisco to say goodbye on Saturday. By Saturday afternoon, Russ and Greg also both had a chance to say their goodbyes as well. But I finally came back into the room, sitting with Alison beside my side. My father had a final chance to have a final FaceTime call, first with Jeremy and then Gabby. They both got a chance to say their goodbyes. At the moment I hung up on the FaceTime call between Gabby and my father, I was sitting close next to Alison, and we were both holding my father's hands. I told my father at that moment that everything was in good shape with our family and our company. I told him I had all the bases covered. Alison spoke up and said to him, "I got your guys back, and I will always take care of them." In the next beat, after Alison finished speaking, my father took in one more last gasp for air. Sitting at his bedside, Alison and I waited and waited and waited for him to take his next breath. He had chosen for himself, that was his last. Our father had left us all at that moment. As far as I'm concerned, my father will always remain the chairman of the board. Dad, you will be with me by my side as I continue on each and every new adventure and every next journey we take together. I know you will say hi to Mom for us. I love you.
Wow. First of all, like Russ, like Scott, thank you all for obviously your presence here. I know we don't have to thank you for that, because out of your love, your warmth, your connection with Jerry, you want to be here. Rabbi, thank you for your being here, for leading us through this journey, navigating us through this. Russ, Scott, once again, you leave me with few words I need to share, because as with Mom, you both cover the bases very fully, very eloquently, and sharing many of all those beautiful experiences. So thank you. In Dad's memory. I'll say just a few words and kind of live by one of Jerry's acronyms. He would always say, KISS. Keep it simple, keep it stupid. In essence, brevity is the soul of wit. So as we know, Dad, to some of you, Jerry, some Gerald, born April 7th, 1930, Denver, Colorado. As we know, parents Samuel, Molly, brother Arnold, and past sister Arlene. May her memory be a blessing. At a young age, Jerry, we know, grew up in a household of very strict upbringing, where the importance of hard work resonated amongst and throughout importance of hard work. I'll just speak loudly, maybe it'll come in and out. Importance of hard work. While Jerry did not have the opportunity to secure a college degree, as noted by Russ and Scott, we know Jerry served in the Navy and participated in the Korean War. It was during this experience he further developed his discipline of hard work, of finishing a job, of learning how to deal with adversity. When Jerry returned back to Denver, following those 2 years of service, he was seeking employment. And initially had the opportunity to go on the road selling women's and men's clothing as a traveling salesman out of the back of his car. He eventually joined up He eventually joined up with his brother Arnold, selling stocks. Under a firm name I had seen on some paperwork called Russell Investments. Jerry, my father, our father, your grandparent, while always exemplifying for his sons and all of us the importance of hard work, being resourceful, working through adversity. Thank you. And never giving up. He demonstrated beyond all of that the highest quality. And that is what Rabbi you highlighted, which is the importance of extending kindness and generosity to others. This characteristic of doing for others was evident in Jerry's actions throughout his life.
It became evident to me in my early years, my teenage years, that truly the act of extending kindness to others enriched one's soul, well beyond being the recipient of such kindness. I feel so blessed that these wonderful qualities are ingrained with how I live my life, in my everyday practice, and are evident in my son Adam, my daughter Rachael, and Zoe. It is important for me to voice for all those present today the words that Jerry repeatedly expressed and brought up to me, not only during the past years, but much more frequent in the past 6 months. Gregory, I've had such a blessed, full life. Your mother and I, what we feel, we were instrumental in bestowing upon our 3 sons. 3 sons who I can say are genuinely good people, solid people, with compassion, with respect for others, and a deep sense of integrity. I can only hope and pray that your brothers Russ and Scott have such fullness in their hearts and live such a long life, full life, healthy life as I have. When our mother, Jerry's wife, Blanche Rose Greenberg, was advancing in her decline, Jerry would ask me, because she was here with us already, we were spending time with her here in Chicago as Jerry was. When your mother passes, what do we do? I explained, Dad, you had the foresight that decades ago you had purchased plots in Denver at Rose Hill Cemetery. He quickly responded, I believe Mom would want to be here in Chicago so we could be closer to you, to Scott, Alison, closer for Robyn and Russ to be able to visit. I then asked, would you and Mom not wish, not desire, to be in the same cemetery as your parents? Without hesitation. Without hesitation. He responded, our parents are just fine in Denver. We prefer to be closer to you guys. Then Dad said, let's go shopping for a couple dozen plots. Let's call Judy right now. I questioned him, Dad, why so many? He replied, this way we can all be together. Fortunately, through some coaxing, Scott, Russ, and I were able to negotiate down to just these 12 plots. I share this as it exemplifies not just Dad, Jerry, or Gerald's foresight and desire to be prepared and always looking forward, always moving forward, anticipating the next. But it gets to the core as to what we've heard today from the rabbi, from Russ, from Scott. What was important to Jerry and to Blanche, our mother, were his sons, daughter-in-laws, grandchild, Blake, and grandchildren. And this is what he and Mom always fostered amongst us, was that closeness that is unmatched amongst many sibling circumstances. I remember back in college, I would receive calls from Dad at a very early hour, at 6 to 6:30 in the morning. He would say, "Greg, why aren't you up? You should be up. What are you doing? You should be studying. Have you talked to Scott today? Have you called Russ today?" Clearly, I was not a fan amongst my dorm mates. Very disturbed by this. This went on and on. And while not pleased with these early morning calls that continued well beyond my college years, it truly resulted and set the foundation and strength of connection amongst all of us in the family. And I know that many of the grandkids are texting each other, calling each other, reaching out, and continuing that connection, which is priceless. And in life, the connection of family and the depth of what that means supersedes everything. As we've talked of Mom, approximately 8 months ago, was put to rest. Since her passing, Jerry's decline accelerated. As we all know, that's not unusual. One spouse passes, the other one, it may not be too distant thereafter, and certainly was not the case here. When Dad and I were sitting next to Mom, Judy was in the room, Scott and Alison were in the room, Robyn and Russ were connected in via phone. While sitting with Mom and Dad, with Mom at the bedside, Dad holding one hand, I was holding the other. Dad first was singing, "You Are My Sunshine." Well, Jerry, Dad, you have been all of our sunshines, and you will continue to be a sunshine on not only your 3 sons, your grandchildren, your Blake, but all of the people you have been connected to and touched in the ECD family. And you would say then, after singing that, "Blanche, sweetheart," and this was right as Mom was transitioning after her last breath, Dad said, "Mom's hands are getting cold." I said, "Dad, but she is in the embrace of her parents, Doris and Frank, and with her brother Zalle. And now, Dad, you kept your promise to Mom where you said you will be up there soon with her," were the last words before she passed. You always kept your promises. You were always a man of word. You were a role model, as it's been said today, to your sons, to your grandchildren, to everyone that your path came in touch with. You are now together with your mother, father, Molly, Frank, Mom, and Arlene. So while my heart is heavy with sadness, I am grateful, Dad, that you rest in peace. And may your memory swoon in our hearts and remain the highest blessing in our hearts and our minds.
I was asked to read a poem that was given to Jerry over 20 years ago by a friend. It was a poem that Jerry loved. He wanted it read today. Thank you. But before I do that, let's just share a few thoughts. I've known Jerry for 39 years. He was a friend, a mentor, and when my dad passed away almost 30 years ago, Jerry became like a father to me, and he felt I was like a son to him, and Jerry is what he is, so very missed, and he was loved. Want to share a few things on Jerry that some people know and some don't. Of course, Jerry loved to fly, and United was his second home. And times I flew with Jerry, we would get to the airport so early, and I didn't understand why he was getting up so early to meet him to go fly on United. And first time I found out why. Jerry would carry 100 ECD pens with him, and every gate that we went past, he would give out ECD pens to the United employees working at the gates. And of course, if we were at 30 gates down, he would be going left to right to each of the gates, giving out his pens. And once we got on the plane, then of course every flight attendant had to get some pens. And every time we flew after that, I knew that I would have to get there early to meet Jerry to go through that routine. He loved it. And of course, he also loved being in the United club. So we would also get there early so we could spend time in the United club. So he enjoyed those perks, and he was I believe he had over 1 million miles with United, and well over, maybe in 2 million miles. So there were many times that I flew United without Jerry, and I would go up to a gate and there would be an ECD pen sitting there, and I was like, yep, that's Jerry. We probably purchased tens of thousands of pens, and I'm not sure the exact reason why, other than Jerry wanting to give the pens out. We really weren't looking for investors from the gate attendants or from the flight attendants, but that's something that he really enjoyed to do, and it was fun watching him snooze with everybody at the gates, and they all enjoyed him. And a lot of times before even got to them, they were saying, "Oh, there's the pen guy." So, and then Jerry was very, very hands-on as far as a developer and as far as an operator of real estate. I mean, there were many times that he'd be out in the field, in the mud, and whether he had dress shoes on or not, I mean, he wanted to see what was going on. And even though he trusted people, he still wanted to see for himself. And a specific example is he wanted to look at something on one of the roofs at the Havana Office Park, and those roofs are pretty tall, and you need a 24-foot extension ladder. And Jerry would be out there with his dress shirt on, his slacks, his suspenders, of course, and his dress shoes, and he'd be climbing up this ladder. It was in his 60s and 70s, and I'm thinking, this guy is crazy. And I'm thinking, if he can do it, I can do it. He's 30 years older than me, So of course I follow him up like an idiot and see what he's checking on, and did that many times. We never fell, luckily, no workers' comp claims, so everything worked out well on that. Then on a fun side of him, there were times I would take the ECD group to a seafood restaurant, and he would order oysters, and he would then call the server over, and normally it was a female, and he would indicate that there was something rough in the oyster that he was chewing on, and he then pulled out a pearl, and it was a pearl that was did not have any holes in it, because he would buy these pearls from a jeweler friend of his, and he would indicate, "Oh, look at this! It's a pearl," and he would, of course, the server would say, "That's never happened before," and he would end up giving the pearl to the server, and that person was thrilled. And first time I was there, Jerry and other people didn't know what he was going to do, and it was it's like this can't be right, but he did that multiple times. And then on the business side of things, Jerry, wanted you to get to the point, and there was times in the beginning where I would say to Jerry, "Well, if this would have happened, or if that would have happened, things would have turned out differently." And after a couple times of doing that, Jerry just said to me, "If Grandma had balls, she'd be Grandpa." So it wasn't too many times after that I would give excuses or to say if this would have happened. So Jerry was, definitely had his ups and downs, but I can say that everybody in the ECD office enjoyed working for him and loved him, and everybody is very, very sad today. Now, relating to this poem that was written for Jerry over 20 years ago, it's called "A Most Uncommon Man." 30 years ago, I met a man extraordinaire. Professionally, he's GMG. To his many friends, he's known as Jer. His accomplishments are numerous and hard to believe. He's done things others cannot begin to conceive. He's a visionary far ahead of his time, and at age 70, he's still in his prime. He raised 3 sons to carry on the tradition, but it's hard to him to not be part of the mission. Ask Blanche or Scott or Greg or Russ. He'll come with something spontaneous and emerge victorious. The energy he exhibits is something quite rare. It's difficult to find someone who can compare. He's on the go 24 hours a day. When he finds time to sleep, it's hard to say. He's known by the airlines as our best friend. He's got frequent flyer miles he'll never be able to spend. And if he knows you and you'll ever really in need, he'll be there for you with all possible speed. So I offer a toast to a man I'm proud to call friend. Let's all raise our glasses and elbows bend. Here's to you, Jerry, a toast that's for another 70 years will last. May the worst of your future stem from the best of your past. Jerry, again, you'll be sorely, sorely missed, and I love you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jeremy Greenberg, Jerry's grandson. When I think about my grandpa, or as all my cousins refer to him as Poppy, I think about two things he cared about more than anything: family and work. In many ways, those two things were the same to him. Because my dad was his business partner for 37 years, I think I had the privilege of getting unusual access to him beyond just family gatherings. I'm pretty lucky to say I have countless memories of seeing how my Poppy led our family and conducted business. The first time I was in a work meeting with him, I was the grand age of 4 years old. I bet, in his opinion, that seemed like the right age to get me to start working. I remember very little about what happened in this particular meeting, but it was several hours and I was exhausted at the end of it, but my grandpa was so proud. He couldn't wait to tell my dad and everyone he could share that he was putting his 4-year-old grandson to work. I certainly wasn't the only person in the family he put to work. My family put his 93-year-old mom to work. He used to bring her to the office from her retirement home 3 days a week to make sure she was doing something. I remember him telling me that someone else would check or redo my great-grandma's work, but he still paid her a competitive hourly rate and he wanted to contribute to making a living. It certainly wasn't only 4 and 93-year-olds that he wanted to make sure were working in our family. My Poppy had ways to make sure my dad was working too. While there's certainly a tremendous trust and care for each other, my Poppy wanted to make sure my dad was always in motion. One time, on one of his many trips to Chicago from Denver, my Poppy decided he didn't want to tell anyone he was coming to town. He wanted to make sure things were running as well when he thought others were not aware of his presence. My dad so happened to also be in Lincolnshire for dinner that particular evening and noticed a statue-like person who looked like my Poppy sitting on a bench in the retail center. Poppy tried to act still like a statue and hoped that my dad wouldn't notice him. Even my dad couldn't believe Poppy would hide himself from him until he was a couple feet away. Getting people to work was something that my Poppy was particularly good at. No example is better than the tenacious work ethic of all 3 of his sons. He led them by example and by putting them to work. As stories have been mentioned, they would clean his properties as young kids, and then later in life, from 5 to 6 a.m. wake-up calls as they were in college or early married life. What was amazing is the people that are around him loved it too. He made it fun, and no one outworked him. It all started with him as he would go to the office nearly 7 days a week for most of his life. When his team was there during the week, he'd often have 6 a.m. in-person meetings with his team, and when he was younger, he would have daily 3 p.m. happy hours. Until a couple months ago, my Poppy was going to the office as frequently as he could until he was told he was only allowed to go in 3 days a week. That was clearly a difficult pill for him to take, as going to the office was life to him. 2 of his sons worked there, and many of others chosen Chicago work family, and all he wanted to do was be part of what was going on with them. Even though he didn't live in Chicago, I still saw him a couple of times a month for most of my life. Traveling to Chicago a couple of times a month or planning a trip for us to go somewhere was nothing to him. As several times mentioned, he became one of United Airlines' best lifetime customers. Several years ago, United even offered him to put his name on a plane, which he turned down. The airport terminals and planes was kind of like my Poppy's country club, because I never personally saw him play tennis or golf. While I don't know him ever owning golf clubs or tennis rackets, I know something he made when he was younger. He did have a lot of company pens, as David talked about, that he wanted to give away to every person he interacted with on his travels. He may have thought it was great advertising, but it was really a way for him to meet people and give them something. If you're one of the lucky people to have an ECD pen, you're one of tens of thousands of people probably. Beyond his work trips to Chicago, which were certainly a lot of fun for me to hang out with him when he would visit, he would plan many trips for me and his other grandkids to spend time with him. In particular, we went to Ketchikan, Alaska fishing a lot. I went 6 different times to Alaska, and I only went on the boys' trips. He also took the girls too on their own trips. His son seems to graduate from fishing trips about 25 years ago, so Alaska was really something that that was shared for him and his grandchildren. I loved each trip, but even after all that time, I can't say I love or particularly even like fishing. My cousin Adam and my poppy may have been the only people in our family that really liked fishing, as they may have been the only ones who had the patience to watch the rods all day. Most of the time, Max and I were at the bottom of the boat playing cards while letting Adam and Poppy wait for the rods to come up. With that said, Poppy kept taking us fishing. It was our thing. The best part of those trips were the dinners at night, where he'd frequently remind and joke with us, "Order anything you want. It will just mean less money in the will." He seemed frequently to use travel to bring our entire family together. We often went to Aspen to visit our grandma during her summers in Aspen School of Music, and also would fly all the time to watch Denver Bronco football games with him. As I got older, my grandpa made sure to be active in knowing what was going on in all parts of my life, including my dating. He was a great sounding board. Everything I said to him was private, and no one, including my dad, would ever hear about it, what I was up to, other than him. In the last couple of years, he particularly had a tremendous love and care for my fiancée, Elianna, and her family. Each time I would talk with him when Elianna wasn't there, he wanted to know what she was up to that day. He would always ask about her parents, her grandparents, and sister too. Many times I would visit with Elianna. If she stepped away for even a moment, he made sure to let me know privately how great she was. Sometimes when I was with him and Elianna wasn't there, he would just want to be with me privately without calling anyone. However, when the offer came to calling Elianna, he'd always be excited to say yes to that. It was difficult for my grandpa to talk on the phone later in life, possibly because he never got a smartphone and a hard time understanding technology. What he did have was a flip phone. For him, his flip phone, they still had a few days ago, was for, and I quote, "Hello, goodbye, and fuck you." Looking forward, I feel immensely grateful for all the memories we made together as I try to walk in his footsteps. There's a lot to live up to. 66 years of marriage to my grandma and a deeply connected family and chosen Denver and Chicago work family certainly included, in which I think all of us aspire to live up to many of his qualities. I love you, Poppy. I'm going to do my best to honor you each day by how I treat and provide for others. See you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile.
Many of you know my grandfather as Jerry or Gerald Greenberg. Well, I've had the privilege to call him my puppy, Jerry. He always said he was going to live until 100, and I really felt that he truly has lived that long. He always said how fortunate we all are. And truly, we are the ones who are fortunate to have him this many years. 92 years old and still had his sense of humor. I'll always remember him for his wise words of wisdom and his loving and selfless heart and his sense of humor. I was fortunate enough to have lived in Denver with him and Blanche for many years past college, and would go to dinner weekly with him and Blanche. We'd always go to North and Cherry Creek or the Deli on Hamden. They would pick me up from my freshman dorm room, and I always saw Grandma sitting in the front seat while Poppy was driving. And once in a while, he and I would go to the Broncos game together, where we would share many special memories together. He always would wear his black headset with an antenna to listen to the sports reporters talk about the game. The last time I spoke to him was just a week ago, and before we always hang up, I always said, see you later, alligator. And he always responded after a while across the aisle. always be a huge part of me. I love you, Poppy. Now you're with Grandma, and I know you're just nudging her, saying, "Come on, Blanche, let's go." And I know she would say, "Oh, Jerry, stop it. I need to practice for 3 more hours."
Hi, I'm Gabby Greenberg. I have the privilege to call Jerry my grandfather, my poppy. I just want to start off by saying thank you again to the 3 Greenberg sons, Uncle Russ, Uncle Greg, and Dad Scott. You are the most important, most cherished legacy for Poppy. Thank you for bringing Poppy to Chicago so he could spend more time with his family over the last 2 years, and for making sure he lived with ultimate dignity and grace. You made him so proud. Family meant everything to him, both his Greenberg family and work family. I feel immense gratitude for getting 29 years with my Poppy. He lived to see many of my life milestones, from my bat mitzvah, attending my college graduation, and living to hear about my wedding to my husband Andrew, which was just 1 month ago. As I was walking down the aisle, I was so emotional. While he wasn't there, I felt his presence and Grandma's presence in me. They were in my heart, and I felt their presence in those tall, strong redwood trees that surrounded the ceremony, which to me symbolized their magnificent, ever-growing marriage. And now I see this beautiful, unique sculptural tree that sits right next to them. It's one of a kind, truly stunning, just like their marriage, and will continue to grow in the same way they did. There are so many topics one could mention that have been mentioned about Poppy, from his amazing career, his wit and humor, his passion for travel, United, his ECD pens, his amazing suspenders, his love for his kids and grandkids and work. I just want to take 1 more minute to talk about how much of a champion and true partner and amazing husband he was for Grandma. As a newlywed, I think about their marriage a lot for inspiration. He was married for 66 years, and while Poppy may have had a serious and harder outer shell at times, there was a burning light of love inside of him. He kept Grandma in the forefront of his mind and looked out for her every day in their marriage. After every family dinner, Grandma would get all bundled up in her scarves and coat and grab her purse, and she would hold his hand as they shuffled back to the car. He championed her in her spectacular music career. He would listen to her play in the house for hours and hours every day. And I remember watching him watch her play. The way he looked at her, with great pride, with tenderness and love. He made sure she moved out to Chicago to the end of her life as well, of course not without the heroic efforts from her 3 sons. He visited her every day, checking up on her, and after she passed, he said to me and others that he was making sure that the big guy upstairs had a piano for her to play. The only comfort I have now is knowing he's with her again, and their spirits are reunited. I love you, Poppy. Thank you for being my hero, my leader, and my inspiration. To me and your entire family, you will be dearly missed both now and forever.
The sun is almost set. Words that emanate from the heart really enter the heart. Dedication, service to the country, to his people, to his family. That's what this afternoon is all about. But we have a job to do. We have a mitzvah, kvuras hames, to bury. And so I'm going to ask you all please to rise as we do the memorial prayer, and then we'll move over to the actual burial itself. El moleh rachamim eshoyechem meroyamim hamtzei menuchanechoyana al kanefei ashchina B'may lo zakadosh u'metoirim Kezoy har-arakia mazirim Es nishmas Yosef Mata ben Shmuel Sholach le'olamoy Ba'avor shenadavu tzedakah b'azkaras nishmasoy B'gan Eden menuchasoy Lochem alo rachamim yastireyo B'seiser kenafav li'olamim V'yitzor b'tzor achayim es nishmasoy Adonai unachalosoy V'yanuach al mishkal boy b'shalom V'noimar Amen. O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, grant true rest upon the wings of the Shekhinah in the exalted spheres of the holy and pure, who shine as the resplendence of the firmament, to the soul of Gerald Greenberg, Yosef Mata, the son of Shmuel and Shana, who has gone to his supernal world, for charity has been donated in remembrance of his soul. May his place of rest be in Gan Eden. Therefore, may the all-merciful one shelter him with the cover of his wings forever and bind his soul in the bond of life. The Lord is his heritage. May he rest in his resting place in peace. And let us say, Amen. Now we're going to move over. course, we've just read the garment. The idea is that physicality has no place, so we speak about ethereal, transcendent kind of concepts. Today we're mourning, and with mourning we're leaving behind those things that usually are important to us. They're really not important. Today emphasizes how unimportant they are. Before we lower the casket, we actually put earth from Israel, from Jerusalem, from Mount of Olives. This is a tradition that Messiah will come. There'll be the resurrection of the dead. Those which have departed from this world will come back to life. We will start on the Mount of Olives. By having the earth from the Mount of Olives, this is actually making the Mount of Olives right over here. It's an extension. We yearn and we pray for the moment that this happens. Till then, we'll do what we need to do, which is the mitzvah of burial. I continue with the mitzvah of kavura, of burying, I just want to say there's two customs that we have. Number one is the first shovel. We start with the family. The first shovel we do with the back of the shovel. And the idea is that we're not enthusiastic about what we're doing. We do it out of necessity, but we're not doing it out of enthusiasm. So if you notice, we do it as follows. The first goes from the back of the shovel, and then with the full shovel. Second custom is not to pass the shovel on to the next person. Just put it back in the mound. The idea is a person has to do it themselves. We don't help another person do this. We're going to begin with the family, and preferably if we're going to have this covered so that the casket itself is not seen, and then we'll go to the kaddish. You have multiple shovels. You don't have to wait your turn. After the family goes. And don't be so polite. Okay, the family is gone. Everyone is invited to come and partake of this mitzvah if you'd like. Don't be shy. Time is short. You gotta get it done.
those of you watching the service on the live stream, we will be terminating the broadcast in the next few moments.